Okay. You ready?
Recording. Yes.
Welcome to SplunkTalk, a Splunk podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I'm your host, Hirsch, here with your co-host, Val, and today's guest is Nick Filippi and Lizzy Li, who will talk with us all about the Universal Dashboard Framework, Dashboard Studio, and probably a lot more. But before we go any further, let's check in and see how everyone's month plus has been. Val?
I don't think you've ever messed up your own name during the intro. Do you recall? That's a first, I think.
I don't know, but it makes me happy that I blended our names.
Yeah.
Hirsch.
Yeah.
Hirsch and Val.
Nice. Yeah.
That's our alter egos.
I guess my most recent news is man, my eyeballs are just kind of crazy. I'm taking my glasses off because I can't see with those on. I got a basket of eye issues. I'm not going to go into all that, but like,
by the way, best Green Day album ever, Basket of Eye Issues.
That was a classic. I want to say that was 97.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah. No, it just had like eye surgery, and I've got two pair of glasses, and I can't see one thing with one thing. I got to have like 10 pairs of glasses. Anyway, I'm working through it.
I did not know that Apple now did surgery. You said you had eye surgery?
Yeah, I get it. Keep
Internet surgery.
Keep your day job. Yeah.
All right.
But no, I'm doing all right. I can see better in some ways than I could before. And the other ways are just, I got to work on the optometry, the full package. Working on it. But I'm ready for cybernetic enhancements. Like, I want to be able to, zoom in, AR, I will take all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Like if they said like, we'll put a microchip
hey, Hal,
in.
I've got an experimental thing. Yes.
You're in?
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
How about you?
I really like beta testing until it impacts like other people. Like I don't mind hurting myself. But once you have like dependents and stuff.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But like, no, not right now.
Well, see, I've got my left eye. I can't read in my left eye. I only have peripheral vision.
It can only
they can experiment with that,
Yeah.
Go for it. Do something crazy in the left eye, and I'll just, be a little bit more risk averse with the right eye.
That's what we have too.
Yeah.
So what you had eye surgery.
Mm-hmm.
You can see better now. You also look better. So we see you better.
Oh, okay.
Not that you don't look great with glasses. What are you comfortable sharing what it is they actually did?
If I were not, would that change you asking?
I would just change the topic and maybe we wouldn't notice.
No, I mean, I don't think. No, it's like, I got a bunch of eye issues. Like it's complicated. And it's like the biggest one is the left eyeball problem. Yeah. So I got these back end. So think of it. Okay. So we got Python, we got JavaScript, back end and front end. So I got issues on the back end with the retina. I've got some stuff in the way there. And then I've got issues on the front end with the lenses, so it's just all these things combined together. Well, cataract surgery fixes one or two of those problems. Doesn't fix all the problems. So I still, I got glasses and I, zoom my screen in and all that. So
that's what I was going to ask.
Consequently, at work, like I think about accessibility. Like I'm at the edge of being able to drive, for example. I'm at the edge of not at being blind, but like, it could happen. But like, I'm totally functional in that sense, unless I'm at the Atlanta airport and I'm trying to find my connecting flight. Yeah. And like Delta forgets the login suddenly for no reason. And I got to use the big board and I'm trying to look up the big board. I can't read anything on there. Otherwise, I'm pretty functional.
It's really interesting how many things in life as a fully abled person we like take for granted, and it's like it's fine when they work, and when they don't work, it's like very stressful.
Yeah.
Like sanitation is a like very relatable one for most people in the US because we have very good sanitation removal or sanitation programs. And like you don't think anything of it. It's like the trains, like they run on schedule. But when things don't happen, when people don't do their job, you notice. When people are doing their job, they're not praised for it. It's just been accepted that that's how it should work.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you trying to transition us into you becoming a sanitation engineer? Is that what you were leading to?
I have some news.
Okay, because there's boxes in the background. I'm like,
I have
gotta
been
be related.
Disposing a ton of garbage. I moved recently, which I think I want to say is part of the reason why we've had such a long gap between episodes. I kind of needed to time out our first. We have to book guests, and it depends on their availability in the summer and vacations. Then it kind of gets close to like, well, I gotta pack up my computer, gotta pack up the nice microphone and everything. Then I need time to move and time to unpack.
Moving's exciting though. Yeah, so big changes. Congrats.
Thank you. So yes, I have become quite competent with our sanitation system. I have to say, the place I live now, they have an app. Like you can type in different materials and it'll tell you if it's recyclable or garbage. It'll give you notifications the night before what pickups need to come out, and you can schedule like the bulk pickup and stuff like that. I'm like,
that last one that you had, like the first part, I was like, it comes the same day every week. I got that, but that last one sounds kind of handy.
And so you can type something in, and it's like, oh, this is not recyclable, or like you need to do bulk pickup. Go ahead and schedule the appointment.
Do they tell you, we're gonna take this and we're gonna take it in your recycling bin, but we're really just throwing it away in a different place? Do they tell you that level of detail?
No, but I think that's sort of like the API, like that's the interface. I provide the right parameters, the right inputs, and then it's like up to them how they manage their resources and stuff. But what I realized is that our tag is all Splunk and
no junk.
And what are we talking about right now?
We're talking about junk.
Garbage.
Literally garbage.
We have hit rock bottom.
Well, I'm looking forward to the guests. Two guests today.
Two guests.
And
Dos guessies.
And go back to my really lame attempt at a front end and back end analogy. We're going to be talking to some front end people. So as opposed to, the mechanics of how indexing is done on a Splunk index or something, we're going to be talking about the front end and the things, the way that data is presented. So that should be a neat kind of change of pace there.
Yeah. And I know that we've had some requests to let's get technical. And I am happy to do that in this conversation because I'm embarrassed to say, I have not played with the new dashboarding stuff. And there's a lot. I mean, Nick has, who's going to join us, has such a larger purview as well. But like, there's so much about it that I'm like, I don't know. I'm classically trained Splunk, if you will. I started on AdvancedXML. And so I've grown very fond of the enhancements to Simple. And so this whole new paradigm that we're doing, I'm kind of like,
well, we'll get into the detail with
me over.
Won't we?
So we're going to get into that.
So aside from that, and I'm stalling for time here, I want to do an episode upcoming, a technical episode, if you will, with yourself, and you pick one of your peers on your new team.
Okay.
What do you think?
I can't confirm or deny if that's going to be possible.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I like to play hard to get on my own podcast.
I'm not picking a date. I'm saying a future episode. I'm asking you out at a future time. We can say you get to pick when that date will happen, but I want that to happen.
Oh, someone's at the door. That must be our guest. I think that'll be really cool. I forget how much detail I've shared in this group, but we've had a lot of new people hired into this team. And so when I first moved into the team, it was like a little premature to to have us come on and talk, because it was all just very conceptual. But now that we're maturing our focus and getting further along, and engineering is implementing some things, it'll be much more appropriate to have those discussions. So for people that aren't regular listeners, I am now in a developer experience function. And so my perspective and purview is a lot more on like, how are people developing for or against Splunk? So for or against sounds kind of like good and evil. But what I mean by that is like developing in the world of Splunk is a very unique thing. Like I've had some people where I'm talking about like, oh, do you have people at your organization that do Splunk development? And what they hear is, do you have developers that use Splunk? And I talk to them and I'm like, so what are you developing? They're like, well, we have some dashboards. Like we wrote some searches. I'm like, you guys are users. You're developers, but you're developers of like mobile apps and web apps at your company, not against Splunk. So we have to differentiate that. Then we've got developers who are writing apps and extensions of Splunk. And we have developers who are writing things that interface, like these are SDKs and so forth. So like if I have my own web app and I wanted to talk to Splunk, I can do that.
And you got to think also,
so
like,
flexible.
Who are those people? What are their kind of interests lie? Because you could have a hobbyist, like you and I have always been that, filling that role. You could be doing it in the line of duty per se in, your company has a big Splunk instance. Okay. But you could also be, there's a variety of different kind of partner angles here. Some of them are OEM, where Splunk is behind the scenes and, the customers don't see that at all, but it's there. And they need certain, they have certain needs that they have.
We even have, and you framed it very, very well, as if you used to be a developer, evangelist.
Yes, I will. I'm not sure where you're going with that word, but yes, I will go with evangelist. Yes, that was a previous title.
There's actually another one that I assumed existed, but it was really tickled to learn. There are partner companies that are almost like solution for hire. So like some big technical partner, like that, I'm not going to name names even,
but I've got like 7 on the tip of my tongue that I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But like, okay, I'm a company, I produce like some technology and people want that in Splunk, and we don't have the talent for creating that. So what do? Well, they hire a partner to produce the app, and the app is published.
You know what we called them? We used to call them
their own
boutique systems integrators, or BSI.
Speaking of BSI, we've got 2 people in the waiting room. Shall we let them in?
We should, but you're going to have to walk back and explain that attempt at a segue there.
Oh, there was no attempt, no segue.
Okay.
It was the ramblings of the sugary drink in me ramping into the bloodstream.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Nick, Lizzie, hello.
Hello.
You are joining us right in the middle of a conversation we were just basically eager to kind of welcome you into. So we could probably do introductions. I mean, everybody knows who Burch and I are, but let's start with the woman in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, Lizzy Li. Hello. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Or what we like to call your origin story.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, 9 months before I was born, my parents, I'm just kidding. I
skip ahead a bit.
Nailed it on that joke. That's the best framing of that joke that we've heard.
So I've been at Splunk now it'll be actually 3 years in 2 weeks or so. So in a couple of weeks, I'll hit my 3-year anniversary. Prior to being on the dashboards team specifically, I was working on some of the other premium apps that were really focused on visualizations. So IoT and business analytics with Splunk Business Flow. Prior to that, I worked at GE and I did like a bunch of different jobs. I think I had like 6 or 7 different jobs while I was there that kind of spanned pre-sales to post-sales and engineering. And through that experience is kind of how I figured out that I wanted to be a product manager. So I'm very happy where I am now.
Very cool.
Did you go were you academically aligned with this line of work? Like, did you have a technical degree or go to college or just not go to college at all?
Yeah, my background is in mechanical engineering. I'd always really enjoyed like the physics, like mechanics part of physics in particular. And so that's what I studied in school. But then I had an internship that made me realize I did not want to pursue that as a career. And that's when I joined GE, because they had one of those rotational programs that just let you try a bunch of different things. So I could try and find what I'd like to do. And I eventually found, of course, product management.
Oh, that's awesome.
I also am a rotational program graduate. I don't know. Lizzy, one last question before we flip to Nick. As a mechanical engineer, as a youth, did you have the Connects Big Ball Factory?
I did not. I actually did not. I liked the that mousetrap game where you could try and start. Yeah, that's mostly what I like to play with.
Those are all called Rube Goldberg machines.
Yes. Those are awesome. Favorite OK Go video.
All right. What if it's the one where they're on the treadmills? I forget what it's called.
I don't remember the name of that one, but yes, I do know that one. There's so many to choose from that are like epic classics.
Yeah,
their catalog. So, on that note, maybe we should flip it over to Nick and ask him his origin story.
Okay, go.
Yeah. Hey guys, Nick Filippi. I have been a product manager at Splunk for, I guess, over 9 years now.
7
so it's
years. Yeah.
And 9. It's been a great ride. Over the last 9 years, I've had the pleasure of working on a lot of different projects. My very first project actually was Mod Inputs.
I didn't know that.
That was a very interesting project that landed on my plate in my first month.
Well, I have to ask you a question. I'm sorry, I got to ask him a question. This is very serious.
Yeah.
Why that way? Like that whole introspection scheme business, like nobody does that. That was weird. Why?
The introspection of like the XML.
The way that you created a mod input, you had to create a listener that talked to the standard in and out of Splunk D and then it shared a bit of XML to show its capabilities, and that happened at startup. And then that allowed you, when you go to add inputs, to fill out a dialog box. So I get the need for what it needed, but I've never seen that type of method where you're spitting out this bit of text up front. That was a unique solution, and I was very curious.
Yeah, I actually don't have a good answer to that question. It was kind of just like an artifact of how it was built.
I'm gonna call
just say I was new and young. I didn't know what I was doing. I got mixed up in drugs and the dark side of Splunk.
Yeah, I'll let it go. I had a lot more hair and all this. But I think a lot of what we kind of did after that kind of evolved from it. So I was happy to say that in subsequent projects like custom alert actions and all the work in SimpleXML, I think we kind of tuned how that works. Like I think in custom alert actions we had a whole separate HTML dialog that developers could craft to represent that little like UI snippet. So we've kind of evolved how we do a lot of our developer plugins over the years, but yeah, some legacy things just never get updated.
Because the whole mod, like that started like a mod squad of different like mod things, and like there was mod inputs, and it was like, hey, this is great. See you later, scripted inputs. And next thing you know, we've got like mod viz, mod alert actions. But is that all you? Was that you and your mod squad?
I would love to claim the origin for it. It was actually my boss at the time, Jonathan Cervelli. So he's so I think he started with the concept of mod inputs. I just kind of took it over at the finish line. But then, it seemed to be there seemed to be a great need for kind of more comprehensive developer plugins, right? So that kind of launched mod alerts. And then I worked with the PM at the time, Michael Porath, for ModViz, and I think each extension kind of worked off of or built on top of the previous one, so they just kind of like got a little bit better every time. But yeah, that was the last 9 years. Actually, even prior to joining Splunk, I was a PM at another company where I OEM Splunk. So I kind of found this small little company called Splunk that did this like really amazing log search and reporting tool, and tried it out and just fell in love with the tool, and decided to convince Splunk to allow me to OEM it. And the rest is history.
That's funny. We were talking about OEMs before you joined. That's
OEMs. I thought you were talking about like yoga ohms. Nick, are you pre or post IPO?
Just post. Yeah.
Just post.
So sad.
Oh.
So sad. Man. See, I thought you were here longer than me, but then when I was first at the company, like I didn't know anybody, so I guess that was. So I was just before, and you were just after.
Oh, Hal, you're just before.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right, awesome. So, more recently, what kind of areas are you responsible for? Or if I feel like you're doing a lot of front end UI usability kind of stuff. Is that fair?
Hal, can I re-ask your question in a totally stupid way?
You're going to.
I'm going to, no matter what.
Yeah.
Lizzy, Nick. Why do you think we brought you here today?
Nick, you want to go first?
No, go ahead, Lizzy.
Oh, okay. I was trying to punch it off to you.
I went principal's office strategy on that.
Burch, I thought you were going to ask the question, what would you say you do here?
What is it you do here? I'm a people person.
Mostly cat herding.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, there's a lot of cat herding involved in product management, I feel like. For the most part, right? You're trying to like captain a ship to go and get everyone to work and go in the same direction. So I guess for us, that's specifically pertaining to dashboards. And the new Dashboard Studio, which is built on the framework, the UDF framework that Nick owns.
So
that's your cue, Nick.
What is UDF?
So UDF stands for Unified Dashboard Framework. And so the origins of it were that we wanted to create a single framework that was used across all of our products and by all of our users. So it kind of combined at the time. We had two evolutions. One was SimpleXML and one was Glass Tables, and these were kind of used by very different apps and for very different use cases. And the idea there was, one, how can we create kind of one cohesive dashboard experience that all of our products could use, that our users could use to tell more effective stories, and yeah, that was kind of
so let me ask you to take that and reflect on what something Splunk has done in the past, which is to say, okay, we want people to build on our platform. What do people know? They don't know the Splunk domain specific languages necessarily. The web developers, they have this other set of skills over here. What is hot and popular, at the time, let's embrace and build a web framework that would take that into account. For example, we did some stuff with Django. And if you were to revisit that today, it would be React or whatever. What are your thoughts on how you kind of choose what is relevant to the audience there, and how much must they know about Splunk in order to get something neat out of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we were fortunate at the time that we already had an internal framework that was called Splunk UI, and that kind of got spun up internally about a year prior to UDF starting, and that was a framework primarily built on React, which is was and continues to be a very popular framework, and it was adopted across our entire platform. A lot of our internal developers just loved using it, and so we, as part of thinking through the UDF architecture, we knew that we had to leverage that framework. One, for consistency, right? So that our internal developers are all leveraging the same tech stack and it's fully compatible. And then second, it's a modern framework. So not only does that help with our existing internal developers, it helps with people that we hire. We're a growing company, so getting someone to join Splunk and be productive on day one is super important. And then also for our partners, right? Our partners are building and extending our products in so many cool ways. And how can we help that? Is the same way that we help ourselves, which is more modern frameworks that allow them to build quicker and hire and onboard their own teams to be productive.
Yeah. So I mean, when you're creating that job opening, that job requisition, it's like, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for a developer. Yeah, but what? And React is going to get a keyword hit, in the job search engine or whatever. So to an extent, you have to aim at, I guess, some of the skills in the marketplace.
I'll reveal that before you two joined, I was waxing to Hal about how, I grew very fond of SimpleXML because of all the skinned knees I had when it was much simpler and everything was on advanced XML, that, when you wanted to do something more, I don't know, I'll say advanced. And then fortunately, we really enriched SimpleXML and did a lot of really great things with it. And, made it more clear how to do extensions and CSS and JavaScript. And that was all very great. Now we have sort of a benefit here in this conversation because I can sort of play bad cop. Like Hal has, you guys don't know this, but in almost every episode, Hal is telling me, have you played with UDF? I mean, it is so cool. We got to do an episode on UDF. And I'm like, all right. I'll get to it. So I have not yet had that, I'm sort of rejoicing in this role of countering Hal and being like the stalwart. I have not played yet with this new thing. I'm quite happy with SimpleXML. Why do I have to learn something new? See how I get more hunched over and haggard as I Haggard, I think is
Hagrid is someone else. Yes.
Yeah, I've been screwing up words all episode so far. So I think
is there a question there? I mean,
there are certainly people, especially developers, who are kind of wondering, what does this solve for me? What pain does this do? It's like, why UDF?
Should I take
that? Do you want to take that, Lizzy? Or
I'll take a first stab at it, since SimpleXML also falls under my purview for the time being. And some of the key things that we're trying to address with Dashboard Studio that were a little bit harder to address in SimpleXML are like, how do I create a really beautiful dashboard that I can throw up on a big monitor, or I can send to my executives and they're able to read it and see exactly, the information that they need to be able to make decisions from. And in order to do that in SimpleXML, it can be a little bit challenging because of the rigidity of the layout options that you have, right? So you can't really resize things or just place them freely wherever you want. If you want to change colors so that they, match your corporate colors, right? You need custom CSS in order to do that. So then it necessitates that your dashboard builder, maybe they're an analyst or something, and they're really just trying to put the visuals together, now suddenly needs also this developer skill set to be able to make some of those changes. If you also wanted to I think when we think about enabling more users kind of along that vein, is it becomes a little prohibitive for people to be able to create dashboards that they can use and consume. So definitely that's one big aspect of it, for why UDF, or in my particular case, we consume UDF in enterprise. So for Dashboard Studio, why Dashboard Studio? So now you want to create these really beautiful dashboards, you can easily do that in the UI. You don't need to go into source. You don't need to upload style sheets or custom JavaScript or anything like that.
So what I'm hearing is the things that I was saying made SimpleXML so cool that I could now extend it with these code features. What I'm hearing is you actually don't need to write those code things. They are now primary like aspects of dashboarding with UDF. Is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely. So we're trying to tackle like the 80% use case for when we see people using custom CSS or custom JS. So I'll give you a couple examples, right? I want to change the colors of my bar chart. Now you can just do that in UDF. It's natively supported. You just specify what colors you want and boom, it's done. You don't need to worry about adding anything custom. You don't have to worry about if you upgrade and then something suddenly breaks with your custom extensions. No, everything will be supported with like backward compatibility. Another example for custom JS is we saw that it was pretty common that people wanted to have a number input. So they would actually add a text input and then do some custom JS to restrict it to only take number values. And why shouldn't we just be able to support that out of the box? So
like a form input on a dashboard.
Correct.
That's restricted to numbers. Okay.
Yeah. So what we did is instead just provide a number input out of the box. So trying to just support more things natively in UDF is definitely one of the big improvements that we're trying to make, just so that it's a lot easier on our customers to not have to, manage dealing with all of those extensions. And let's say, you suggest that you want a number input. Well, rather than you just building it for yourself, by building it into the product, then everybody else can benefit from it as well.
So I'm going to challenge that in a second, but before I go there, is it easier for us to, using this new framework, is it easier for us to develop new features and release those, more quickly? Is there something inherent to how it does that better?
That's a great question. I think I will defer to Nick to answer that, but one of the key things is that UDF being a shared library, when we make changes in UDF, it gets proliferated across multiple products rather than each product team now needing to make changes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I'll kind of start the answer to that question saying, UDF is still new. It still is kind of in its infancy, so to speak. SimpleXML has a long runway of almost 10 years of development on it. And I have no doubt that, UDF and our vision behind it, there's a ton of great stuff that's coming. Today, what that looks like, Hal, to your question around, can I build something and use it? I think the key benefit to UDF today is, when I build a custom component, like a data source or a visualization or some like interactivity on the dashboard, it is leveraging kind of React as its primary tech stack. So it does have kind of reusability built in mind. So within your app that you're building, unlike custom JavaScript and CSS extensions where you kind of have to copy it dashboard to dashboard. Mm-hmm. UDF as a framework within a given app, like it does have reusability within that context.
Okay, so kind of object-oriented-ish features there. Okay.
Exactly. And then, where the future might take it in terms of, can we have that level of customization and the community behind it with, something a la Splunk base? That's all yet to be kind of figured out.
That was going to be my next question. It was like, hey, we talked about mod viz, you can come up with a great idea, ship it as an app on Splunk base, and we got to that point where there could be a community of reusable things that way. I heard you've got some detail around. Okay, well, it was and it wasn't, but is this a better model? Will we be able to get back to that, but solve for that extensibility in the user interface with the community with something extensible?
Yeah, and I think the way that we're trying to tackle that, at least internal first, right? So as Lizzy was mentioning, there's a lot of internal consumers, whether that be enterprise, ITSI, enterprise security, mission control. Like our first objective is, can we at least create that same sort of reusability across our internal customers? And like once we've kind of figured out like the APIs are solid, the extension points are well built and well supported, then that'll be a time where we kind of discuss like, can we unleash this on our great community?
So okay. Just before you ask the question I know you want to ask, clarifying question. I love playing the dumb person here.
You're
What's
great
the
at
difference
it.
between UDF and Studio?
Good question. So just as some, I guess some examples are, so UDF will provide the basics of, I want to add a chart, I want to wire a data source to it, and like how it's laid out on the canvas. If you want to add shapes, what have you, you can do that. Where each of the app teams need to implement certain capabilities on top of that generally comes down to either features that are very specific to that app, or features that are very specific to the app, and then also management capabilities around those dashboards. So for example, in Dashboard Studio, we have some additional capabilities that we've added into our version of UDF. So once we have taken up UDF, we've added the ability, for example, to export a dashboard as a PNG or a PDF. We're adding the ability to schedule that dashboard as a PDF, like email attachment. We also use, of course, SPL1, whereas Mission Control is using SPL2. And so those teams, were respectively responsible for making sure it works accordingly. So most of the differences start to come at like the app or platform layer, differences that we need to support our particular use cases. And then I think Nick will know better than I do. But for example, if you look at Dashboard Studio versus ITSI glass tables, like you will see differences in the editing interface, some of the capabilities that are available to you. So each team can kind of build and extend from the UDF library.
Is the Studio like what we call the in-product experience of using UDF, and UDF is literally the framework, the definition of it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then follow-up question. In the old times, we would like switch to XML. We could like have an editor in the product. What's the editing experience like for people who prefer to type their dashboards than to WYSIWYG them?
Yeah. I don't know, Nick, if you want to take this, because it's UDF specific and across the board.
Sure. So somewhat similar to SimpleXML, there's a UI editor and then there's a source editor. I would say that the source editor, the biggest contrast in Studio and UDF is it is JSON based. So that, yeah. And I'll touch on
for
that.
Those
in a
not
second.
Watching the video, Burch had a double take.
Do it again, and I'll do a spit take.
Right.
I think his heart skipped a beat is what I saw as well. But
he said JSON.
So it is JSON, and it is I would say a little bit more modular in SimpleXML. So SimpleXML was very kind of like declarative in the structure of it represented a hierarchy of and the layout of the dashboard. This has a little bit more kind of modularity where everything is kind of foreign key specific. So you have visualizations kind of mapped out. You have all your data sources mapped out in another section, defaults. You have the layout, and they're all kind of linked together via IDs. And the interesting thing about SimpleXML, actually under the hood, or actually in the runtime, it was actually JSON, and we just kind of had to continuously, transfer or persist it as XML. So there was actually a lot of headaches involved in that, especially
so all my
while we were
simple XMLs are really being interpreted as JSON. And they have not been telling me this secret the whole time.
It was JSON the whole time.
It was JSON the whole time. The classic Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
just pull the mask off. It's not XML. It was old man JSON the whole time.
Yeah, so the runtime was actually JSON just for browser kind of compatibility reasons. But yeah, so I think our first approach with UDF and Studio was, let's just keep this simple. So if the runtime is JSON, then let's persist it as JSON, and then let's reevaluate according to the team, like we could experiment with YAML and other kind of persistence layers at a later date, but let's try to keep this as straightforward and focus on features as opposed to the complexities.
Well, I think that at this point in time, it's 2020, 2021, where you're developing and releasing this feature as opposed to 5-10 years ago where XML was king. We've moved on from hating XML, and now we're hating JSON or YAML or both. So it's the decision makes sense. Maybe it won't feel familiar to Burch personally, but I think there's plenty of stuff that uses JSON, so that makes sense.
What? So you mentioned something you mentioned many things that caught my attention, but a latent pain, if you will, something that I think is frustrating about SimpleXML, but was never there was no other option. So there was no way to notice how frustrating it was. In SimpleXML, it's so embedded. Like my search has to be in line, in the right place. My rows have to be in order. My panels have to be in order. What I'm hearing is with this new framework, it's more like declarative and then like abstracted by the IDs. So things are like defined, and that can be all collected in one spot. And then like the layout can be defined and just reference those IDs, allowing like editing and managing these dashboards, especially as they start to get very complex, to be much easier. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, and I think one of the very early thoughts there was, in SimpleXML, we often saw dashboards that had 20 something panels on it, and those represented often 20 inline searches that took you saw it and you knew how long those took. One of the concepts that we were kind of thinking about very early on was, could you have a dashboard with 20 panels, all driven off of one data source, and then each kind of panel represented a different slice or different view of that data, which would kind of give you two things. One is performance, and then the second is a level of interactivity that was actually kind of hard to wire up in SimpleXML. So you click on a slice in a pie chart or a cell in a table, and you want to filter that entire page, all those 20 panels on what you just clicked on. Well, in SimpleXML, it's you have to set a token, you have to be very surgical about where that token gets put in what query across all 20 of those panels. So if it was really just effectively one data model, and then you're just kind of tweaking the base filter of that data model, data source, and data set, is that a better model to follow? That was kind of one of the thoughts.
By that external ID that you mentioned, or that foreign key, and you can make your changes once and have that become effective immediately.
Yep.
A lot simpler building. I can see that. Yeah.
Is it still flat files that persist on the file system? Like each dashboard?
Oh, you mean as framework KV store?
Yeah.
So all the dashboards are still stored in the same place that SimpleXML dashboards are stored. So I should say all the new Studio dashboards are still persistent in the same place. They're actually persistent as XML files in data UI views. So they're all in the same place, and they're stored with the same structure.
Okay.
Wait, what about XML?
So currently the way that it works, and we made this decision so that we would be able to ship sooner rather than have to wait on backend support for like native backend support for to support JSON. What we are actually doing is we're taking the entire dashboard definition and sticking it into an XML file and then storing it that way.
I feel dirty right now.
Like a basic XML where the embedded payload is the entire JSON page.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the SGML entity in order to not have to worry about the escaping of the JavaScript and okay.
I imagine there were some very passionate discussions that preceded that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of back and forth, and we decided that we could do this now and we can still update later. So we decided to just move forward with that now, and then deal with it later.
Okay, so it was XML all along. Man,
Scooby-Doo rips it off the desk.
Yeah,
It's JSON underneath. Rips it off again. It's XML and underneath.
They do that in the movies, right? The Scooby-Doo movies.
Yeah.
They didn't have time for that in the episodes.
Well, they had to ship it on time, and they knew they could always change it in the sequel.
Yeah.
So what about like images or other assets, or like, is there a concept of having like CSS or
static?
JavaScript?
No.
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, I stepped on top of Burch in order to say.
So I'm saying, like,
is it the same place? Is it in the static folder?
Well, do people even need CSS and like JavaScript anymore for UDF?
Well, it's not supported, so
there you go.
So that answers where the files are located. What about like images? Because we mentioned like company logo and branding.
Mm-hmm. So we support images and also icons or SVGs, custom choropleth SVGs, and those are both stored in the KV store. So per deployment, we have two KV store collections, one for image files, one for SVG files. So both icons and other choropleth SVGs. And so whenever it's something that is interesting about it that we've learned recently is obviously a lot of customers have multiple environments for development, QA and production. And so now that we've introduced this dependency on the KV store, anytime you upload images, that obviously becomes quite challenging when you actually want to develop something in your development environment and then migrate it over to your production environment. And so there are a couple of options that users have. So I mean, anyways, that's the vanilla answer for like how
but now I want to dive into it a little bit deeper in the sense that you have a little bit of a migration exercise that you have to do.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a couple of options. For the immediate term, their users can also add images using a URL. So if you have an image hosted somewhere, or if you're packaging dashboards in an app that you control, you can place those images in the static folder and use a relative URL to reference them and have them in the dashboard. And by doing that, you won't depend on the KV store. And
that's the way it would like work in simple XML world.
Yeah.
Right.
Except that you're calling it via a relative URI, which lands in the static folder. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought it had to be a complete URL.
No.
So that's actually news to me. All right, cool.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. And the other thing, there's something that we are working on now, the development team is working on now, that will allow you to, if you have uploaded images and those are stored in the KV store, that you can actually export a dashboard or multiple dashboards, and it will package and bundle everything for you into a TGZ, and then you can ship it off to the next, whatever target environment that you have. And when you upload it, it will also upload the images for you so that your dashboard will render as expected.
Okay. Is that not an app? Sounds like an app.
It's not an app. We are planning to build it right into enterprise, like directly into Splunk core, so that, you can just go to the dashboards page, right, and hit an export button and it'll generate that file for you. Still in progress though.
Interesting. Because there are a lot of apps that are just dashboards. So that's really interesting. Like similar design. Yeah.
So we wanted to tackle kind of two use cases with this particular feature that we're working on. So one is, of course, I just want to move things from, environment A to environment B, as well as, let's say one of the things we've seen is a lot of our sales engineers will say, hey, I built this dashboard for my customer. I added images. How do I actually ship it to them, right? And they don't necessarily want to have to build an app to be able to just package that one dashboard that they built and sent it over to their customer. And so that's one of the reasons why we went for this approach in particular. In the case where you are managing an app yourself anyway, so we have heard customers who they do that they do that anyways. Like that is their process for moving dashboards between environment A to environment B, in which case we can recommend to them to just stick those images in the static folder because they have access to it. But, thinking about in particular the case of, let's say maybe I'm not an admin or I don't have those skills to know how to do that. And I just want to move a dashboard from one environment to the other, or I want to share it with someone else. This will provide a solution that will allow us to be able to do that more readily.
Okay, so you can, and going back to the customer that has, a dev and a production environment, for example, maybe you've got Splunk loaded up on your laptop, or you have a separate dev stack or whatever. You can go in, use all the advanced UI features, build your dashboards, do some cool stuff there, have some images to go along with it, and you place those wherever, and you've got an answer either way, and you can take that and then export it to that second instance. I just want to make sure that I kind of covered everything in one sentence-ish. And yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm so
not
curious.
Really a question.
What was the benefit of the KV store design? Like, because KV store can be very effective at like loading faster than like the comp file and stuff. So
if you had a 500 meg or a gig CSV file, yeah, those guys are hard to work with and update. And I know there's a lot of good reasons for KV store there. What does it bring to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it definitely predated my time on the team, but what I understand, and maybe
Nick 9 years, Nick,
is that I believe that it was one of the few options that we had that could make it like generally available to users and like kind of abstract the storage and retrieval of those images from the end user.
Okay. Let's transition away from that type of discussion. And I want to ask, how do customers get it? And I know some will have been using it for a little while now. You want to talk about that kind of progression as we have products, we have multiple products now, and they're offered multiple ways.
Dashboard Studio or UDF?
Yes, to either or both of those things.
I mean, they have to download a beta app to get it, right?
Oh, great question. No, you do not need to download a beta app to get Dashboard Studio.
You can count on his corniness. It's built in.
Is this an infomercial? Is there a 1-800 number to call to order it?
Just for easy payments.
It makes coffee too. Wow.
So Dashboard Studio, so that would be like kind of the enterprise curated experience of UDF, is available out of the box with Splunk Core. So for on-prem customers, that's 8.2 and higher. And for cloud customers, that was 8.1.2103 and higher.
I can't believe you remember that off the top of your head.
Oh, yeah. I say it so many times. It's like my childhood phone number. It's like locked in there forever. But for UDF, I will let Nick talk about how people can get a hold of it.
Yeah, so UDF is an NPM package. It's publicly available. And actually, interestingly enough, it has been since, I think, Conf of 2019 is when we kind of first rolled it out. The kicker has been, though, that the documentation around that, so as an app developer, and if you wanted to take advantage of UDF in your app or introduce any kind of one of those custom extensions that we talked about, you have to grab the NPM package, but there's no docs.
Nice.
So that's one of the things that, funny enough.
I see. We took the Pokemon Go approach of go enjoy it and good luck figuring it out.
Yeah, there is no like intentional exclusivity around that decision, but it is something that we're working on. Hopefully we'll be able to announce something soon.
So now I'm a little confused because I kept thinking the framework was like the dictionary, like the definition of it. But then like the studio was the experience, how I use it. So Nick, you're sharing that you can get the framework on NPM. What do I do with the framework when I get it? Like, why would I be interested in getting it?
Yeah,
because I'm never going to get it. Never going to get it.
We're going there to song puns and
We're always going there.
We're always there.
It's just normal mode.
Very nice. So yeah, that's a great question. So what would drive someone to using the NPM package as opposed to just vanilla Studio? And it primarily has to do with customization. So if I'm building an app and I want something highly custom from what I see in Dashboard Studio, like I have my own visualization that I want to incorporate. I have this like interactivity. So I want to be able to introduce a button that opens a modal or a drawer that gives me some other experience. Or I want to embed kind of what looks like a Studio dashboard within a single page application that does a whole bunch of other things. Those are kind of some of the core reasons why, as a developer, I would want to kind of integrate it into some other experience that I'm looking to provide.
Okay, so Lizzy, this is when I asked you this question in February, you're like, we're working on that. This is that thing that we were talking about.
This is a very big thing. This is like a big category.
It took me a minute to get that. It took me this entire podcast to get that, actually. And you and I have been talking about Dashboard Studio for quite a while over the year. So, okay, cool, Nick. So now with this release of UDF and the documentation, that would be nice. People would be able to build those custom experiences, something richer, and they can ship that.
And our top level goal is really to enable our community to build the same quality apps that we internally build. So, you look at some of the apps like ITSI or ES, or even some of the newer ones like Mission Control. Can we actually take the tools that we've built internally and that we've kind of offered internally and just make them available, documentation and all, and allow folks, partners, customers, you name it, to have the same tools that we use internally, and they can build some of those advanced workflows, applications, etc.
Okay, okay, cool. So the thing that is built, I include npm include this module into my app that I'm writing. What is it that I will then ship or release? Is it that tarball that Lizzy had referenced earlier? It is not a Splunk app, correct? It is or is not a Splunk app as we know it otherwise.
You could build a Splunk app. So so we'll give you
all
the built
things.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll give you they're build tools that allow you to create that custom experience, and you can ship that as a Splunk app. That'll be available on Splunk base.
Okay, all right. That sounds excellent. Now, I want to ask a question that I've talked to Lizzy about this before, and I don't know if the story will have changed or not, but I am a big fan of mobile technology, and I use mobility all the time in addition to my day job, sitting at a computer. I'll be on iPad or my Android phone all the time. So what is the story there?
Such a geek.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, will these new user experiences that I create, will they work on mobile better and, worse and different, to what I could do with SimpleXML today?
That's a really great question. So we are working actively with our Connected Experiences team to enable support on Splunk TV, Splunk Android, Splunk Mobile, Splunk whatever else we have.
AR,
the flamethrower. Yeah.
To support the UDF dashboards starting, I believe we are starting with the Studio dashboards specifically. So you would be able to go basically any dashboard that you have listed, like in search and reporting or in your environment, you'd be able to actually view it on your mobile device. And from the early designs I've seen, they've come up with some very clever ways for how to view and drill into things that are on your dashboard, which obviously was designed on like a desktop, like a browser interface, and then have it actually display and be able to view it on a mobile device, like a little phone.
Okay, awesome. Any caveats or anything, differently on the UDF side that to add there, Nick?
No, I mean, I think this is kind of maybe a segue into maybe your next guest, the connected experience, to see some of the cool things that they're up to. But yeah, we've been working closely with them to make sure that, you know, everything that we're shipping, they're able to pick up in lockstep and offer some kind of mobile specific gestures and responsiveness to everything. So, you know, what you'll see in terms of how you interact with certain things, you know, will be kind of slightly enhanced from what you see on the web browser to your mobile. So ultimately, you know, with the goal being to create the best experience possible with whatever device you're using.
I have two questions that kind of take us back a little bit. One is like, Lizzy, your statement about having like a number input got my mind going, and I was like, well, what if I, let's pretend if it doesn't exist, if it does, what if I want to create a URL input, so it's like, or an email input, right? So there's validation going on. How does it work today? Does the end user or the developer in this case, do they have the capabilities to define that with UDF? Do they have to extend it? And is there a way to like contribute that back or something?
Great question. So for things that are in Studio, so let's say I wanted some new input that didn't exist, we don't currently support the ability to extend Studio to add those things. So we would request that you submit like a feature idea on Splunk ideas, and then we would use that to prioritize appropriate, like what we would like to build or not. And this could be an example of, let's say Studio, we're the only ones who want it, and ITSI, Mission Control, they don't want it. Then our team could contribute that to UDF as an example of how we work with the UDF team. But otherwise, if it's something that's highly custom and we just don't foresee that many users would actually need that, then that's when we might point them to, you know, using UDF directly and building out that custom input themselves.
So that when they do that, that's almost like what we're doing internally when we're enriching with new features, is we're doing the NPM, getting UDF, and then like adding onto it there. Is there any like kind of key, it's a new thing, so like I'm sure it's not 100% parity with some of the more legacy things like SimpleXML. Any kind of key parity things that people often want to know about as they embark on UDF?
Yes, definitely. Full support for tokens and drill downs is probably the number one thing that we hear. So that's something we are actively working on and focusing on for, you know, the rest of the year in particular. So that's stuff like I want to click on a slice of a pie chart and have it filter other things on my dashboard. So things like that aren't there yet, but we're actively working on it. Another one is being able to do scheduled email export. And so that's another one that we are also actively working on, but is not there yet. And then I think the last major one I hear is around custom visualization. So the ability to plug in third-party visualizations like from Splunk Base. And that one is something that is probably a longer term roadmap item, because there's a lot of work for us to do to figure out how to support.
But you're going to do that work for us. You're going to do that work for us, right? For the community.
Legal disclaimer here. What about, I am probably the only person who continues to use pre-built panels. Is there a concept of a panel?
Yeah.
There is not currently a concept of pre-built panels, but I will defer to Nick for any further commentary on what UDF will support.
So the short answer is there is no pre-built panel, and actually even the concept of a panel is not there in UDF. So I think, you know, one of the things that you probably kind of face is like there's a panel title and then there's a viz title, and sometimes people use one or the other, and there's always like some mix up there. So at least now there is no panel, it's just a viz object on the canvas. And the way in which you kind of create the, you know, if you wanted to, let's say, like group a core set of visualizations together, it's more of a visual grouping, right? So you would just add a rectangle, put it in the background, color it different, and it kind of it gives you that storytelling, that ability to kind of link like objects together, but without the what you would kind of traditionally call a panel and objects within the panel.
Right. So there's no longer like panel as a construct. And I think I'd be very interested to see if like over time, if like we're doing with hopefully doing with custom visualizations, if we explore any
which
ideas
Lizzy
like
is going to do that work on. We talked about that.
Yeah. What's our legal disclaimer? Everything we say and do is subject to change based on our roadmap, and don't make any purchasing decisions based on this. But if you like the idea of reusability, I think that was like a very novel thing in the SimpleXML that I was always a fan of. That reusability allows like an administrator or someone creating different experiences for different groups to have some kind of consistency or like brand consistency across those workspaces. Cool. Wow, this is really exciting.
Yeah, we got in a lot of stuff here. I wanted to just like close with what should I do with this information? I mean, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
What do you want folks to do with this thing that they've learned about something very visual, and a lot of people are visual learners. I'll go to Lizzy first. Quick lightning round sort of answer. Where do you want to send someone to learn more about the Dashboard Studio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So especially if you have a Splunk instance that already has Dashboard Studio, we've baked in our like a SimpleXML examples app equivalent for a Dashboard Studio called the Examples Hub right in the dashboards page. And you can get ideas about the kinds of things that you can build and actually copy those examples yourself to actually start building dashboards with it. So I would say take a look at what's possible, looking at some of those examples, and then try it out.
Awesome. And if you don't have a copy of Splunk sitting around, go to the website, click the green free Splunk button, spin up a cloud trial. There you go. All right. Same question to Nick.
Sure. So I'll kind of answer it in two parts. One is like a user and one is a developer. I would say as a user, one of the goals with Udf and Studio is how can you create a dashboard that kind of accurately represents how you think about your business? So the first kind of call to action would be, how does your business function today? Draw that out on a whiteboard and then see if you can actually create a dashboard that kind of represents that, and overlay that with charts, with single values, with some of the insights that you've already gathered with Splunk. And
that's what I used to tell people when I was a sales engineer. They'd be like, why do we use class tables? I'm like, just take your org chart, not your org chart, but your architecture chart, slap it in there and put some KPIs on it.
Those notes have been taken on that whiteboard.
Yeah, take a picture of it. Yeah.
Some stuff on top. That's your start.
They're like, that easy? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great way to start and to kind of experiment with it, right? Is like take what you would draw on a whiteboard and see if you can make it happen in Splunk. The next thing, and this is more on the developer side, is this is something that we're rolling out soon. The docs and a core set of use cases and examples. Please, when it does come out, play around with it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what kind of extensions you want to see, what examples you want to see. And also share with us what you've done with it, because we always get inspired by what the community does, and that helps us build better products. So
I assume there is a spot on our community site.
Yeah. How do they share? How should they share?
Yeah, that's a great question. We will, or I guess legal disclaimer included, we're hoping to provide some kind of direct engagement channel. So Slack, email, couple of other different
discussions, ideas. We got this whole community site, y'all.
Yeah, and I think until something more formally is announced, there's always like the app dev Slack channel. I'm sure there's some dashboard ones out there. That's great. And then Lizzy, you mentioned ideas.splunk.com. I just think it's such a great thing, and wanted to highlight that again, that if you have ideas and enhancements like a HTML an HTTP validator or another input, great place to go, right?
Yes, definitely. And we triage those on a regular basis, looking at those ideas and bringing them into our backlog. So stuff actually gets from idea to in product using Splunk ideas.
Very cool.
Well, I have really enjoyed the time that both of you spent with us. So thanks a lot, Nick and Lizzy, for hanging out.